Hello and welcome to the program. I am Imonia Marere. In the wake of the July 11 Supreme Court judgment on financial autonomy for local governments, which also mandated the federal government to remit all allocations due to local governments directly to only democratically elected councils and not through state governments, there has been a mad rush by states to conduct local government elections. As of the last count, only a few of the states are yet to conduct elections into their local government councils. However, concerns and questions have been raised about the nature, the quality, fairness, transparency, and legitimacy of these elections that are conducted by the state independent electoral commissions, as against criticisms that have always trailed elections conducted by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. This is so much so that there are even moves in the National Assembly to amend the Constitution to either turn over the functions of SIECs to the Central Electoral Management Body, INEC, or establish a new electoral body that would be saddled with conducting local government council elections in the country. The conduct of most, if not all, of the local government elections so far have been described as embarrassing and shambolic. There have been calls in some quarters for the scrapping of the state independent electoral commissions. Yet, political parties and politicians who have presided over these flawed polls and validated them are always very quick at bashing INEC and questioning the credibility of elections conducted by it, especially when and where those parties and individuals lose out in such elections. Analysts say that the local government polls have clearly shown the depth of hypocrisy of all the political parties, as demonstrated by their disdain for electoral decency in their unhinged rigging and manipulations of the electoral process. Now, the question is, how legitimate can elected political office holders be if the processes that produce them lack credibility? And, of course, the question is asked, has the autonomy of state independent electoral commissions affected the conduct of local government elections in Nigeria? Well, I'm joined in the studio by two guests. Dr. Chima Amadi is Chairman, Governing Board, Center for Transparency Advocacy, CTA, a political scientist, and a public policy specialist. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Also joining us is Alhaji Shehu Gabam. Alhaji Gabam is the national chairman of the Social Democratic Party, SDP. Thank you so much.
Great pleasure.
For joining us.
Thank you.
Right. Well, let me begin with you. As of the last count, almost 28 or so of Nigeria's 36 states have conducted local government elections. On reflection, what is your perception of the conduct of those elections?
Well, in the first place, there was no election that was conducted in the entire state that you have mentioned. You had a process that was packaged by the governors. And this is what we've been saying, that so long as you allow governors to have their way, to prepare a process, to package a process and deliver it, and you have a judiciary standby to endorse it for whatever reasons, then we are in a bigger trouble than we expected. This democracy is on decline, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. We have condemned it in stronger terms. We have called for the scrapping of State Independent Commission. In fact, SDP was at the forefront campaigning for financial autonomy of the local governments. Because when we were young, we know how effective local governments are. They are dead. The governors have killed the local governments. Like you have mentioned, people will sit down with audacity, shamelessly, to accuse INEC, same governors, if something went wrong. These are the same governors that would disenfranchise Nigerians. They would disenfranchise people of their same states that they differed on dialect or something. They will pick their surrogates and just appoint them as local government chairmen. Some of these delegates cannot, surrogates cannot even write their names. But simply because they want to use them, because the financial autonomy has been passed by the Supreme Court of Nigeria, they want to use them to keep on perpetuating fraud and fraudulent behavior with the local government funds. But what they don't know is that so long as fraud is being committed, or the local government chairman use money meant for the local government system and allow the state governor to intervene, federal agencies have direct access to arrest the local government chairman. They don't have immunity and prosecute them. And that is the deterrence we expect from the judiciary. But from what I'm seeing, the behavior of the judiciary is greatly of concern to all of us, all the key players in the system, whether you're a politician, whatever you belong to. Our system is under threat. Our democracy is under threat. There is no society where you will allow a state to behave as an emperor, a governor, to design a system that violates Electoral Act 2022 as amended, which is very specific, that any election, any local government election, must comply with the process and must use also vis-a. It's very specific. It's mandatory. The use of vis-a is mandatory. There is no election, local government election that was conducted where vis-a was applied. So what you see is a process that has been compromised already. What you see is a justice system that has been compromised already, backing illegality for whatever reasons, and then the democracy itself is nosediving in a very high speed. How the outcome will be, I really don't know. But certainly I can tell you categorically, our democracy is under threat, and the politicians and the people in government must be held responsible. We condemn this. For instance, I took more than 10 states to court because they don't comply with the law. 10 states, I took them to court. In fact, I'm taking all of them. Lawyers, advocates are working on the other state. We cannot allow it to continue. We are not cowards. We either choose democracy or we redefine another system of government that will help this country. But in the situation where few individuals will hold the whole country to ransom in the name of democracy, and you have the sitting president that was elected and took an oath of office, sitting down, allowing this impunity to continue, and you had the Supreme Court that have delivered a sound judgment, regarding the financial autonomy of the local government, then it means that every hope that we had and all our projections are fading out, because the president have the power to purge some of these reckless behaviors. When he was the governor of Lagos, he purged the judicial system. That is why the justice system in Lagos is one of the best. And I cannot understand why an executive can sit down, the National Assembly can sit down, and both of them can have a function, to make sure that they overhaul some of this reckless behavior that is going on in the states. For instance, look at what happened in Kaduna, one of the most shameless in the history of Nigeria, the so-called local government election. Police shooting, even in a situation where armed people with arms are not allowed to go to the police unit. Look at the shooting, the tear gas, the barbarism that took place, similar to other states. And then you have court giving two judgments on same issue. And then the politicians use the same to say, okay, there's this order from the Federal High Court, this one from the High Court, so I will ignore the two and have my way. This is the kind of anarchy we are building into the system. Was it sustainable? The answer is no. What do we do? I don't know.
Okay. All right. Dr. Amadi, from a policy perspective, the state independent electoral commissions are provided for by the Constitution. But the anticipation, or rather the presupposition of the constitutional provision, is that they will be as responsible as their name depicts, independent. Have they really been independent so far?
Except there's another definition of the word independence, then maybe we may begin to explore that. But if independence is what we still know as what it is, then it's what you have basically is a capture of state institutions at all levels. And what you see is the governors, unfortunately, replicating what they see at the national. Because just a few, less than a year ago, or 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, when there were vacancies at the Independent National Electoral Commission, you would think that the political class would have risen to the occasion, especially at the Mr. President then, to actually make that body truly independent by the appointments that were made. But what you saw were people who were clearly partisan. In fact, the most ridiculous of them all was the attempt to nominate the president, one of the president's aides, who was a card-carrying member of the party, campaigned vigorously for the president as a national commissioner, until some political parties, I remember SDP and some other people started shouting, and the civil society, then she was dropped. There were members of the Resident Electoral Commissioners. They were appointed, they were clearly partisan. The outcome was the show of shame you saw in Adamawa State, where a Resident Electoral Commissioner did not only show partisanship, but was ready to come to the court as a witness from one of the political parties. The outcome was the show of shame you saw in Anambra State, in Abia State, where the Resident Electoral Commissioner, on the eve of the presidential election, locked himself up in a hotel and refused to conduct an election. The outcome is what you saw in Sokoto State, where the Resident Electoral Commissioner abdicated his responsibilities to the governor of the state to start making deployments and appointments, which led to INEC to suspend those commissioners and record them. The outcome, I can give you examples of wherever you see people that had partisan inclinations, the outcome of the elections there. And so you saw an attempt to capture at the national level. And because, like the national chairman of SDP said, people kept quiet, or people pretended that nothing was wrong, what the state governors did was to simply replicate, because they know that nothing will happen. Institutions, look, by the provisions of the Constitution, if you read the constitutional provision that created these institutions, you can't fault them. Whether it is the Electoral Act, if you look at the processes that the Electoral Act goes through, the inputs from the political parties themselves by way of IPAC, to the general public, to civil society organizations, to the National Assembly, that the document you finally see is the collective inputs of everybody, where people see faults, correct them. So if they are implemented to the latter, you will see, of course, nothing is perfect. You will see minimal flaws in implementation of the law. But what you see is politicians look for loopholes. And then when they find these loopholes and strike at the soft underbelly of those loopholes, they get a validation at the judiciary. Like my brother here is just clearly talked about the collusion of the judiciary. So you see a situation, you mentioned Kaduna. Let me even tell you two instances in Kanu, for instance. How can you tell me in Kanu, one of the most sophisticated, democratic states in terms of participation, that you conducted a local government election and 528 constituencies all went to one party? Not only that, in Fege local government, which is in the city, that no political party, out of the 7 or 8 political parties, they had one person voting for them. They all scored 0 votes. Everybody voted for NPP. Not even by mistake did somebody say, okay, I want to vote for either APC or any other party. Everybody voted NPP. What an insult. Now, we even go beyond elections. Some state governors are even announcing the outcome of the results, even before elections. Ogun State, for example. The governor has told anybody that cares to want to contest not to forget about it, because that is going to be a clean sweep for his party. An election that is still on November 16. And then so what happens is sometimes these same people that are they are winning everything, when INEC conducts election in those places, you see how their performance. Let us now compare the INEC conduct of election, because people forget that INEC also conducts local government elections, but at the federal, at Abuja.
Yes, at the FCC.
If you look at INEC's conduct of election in Abuja, you will see evidence of competition. For example, the last election I was conducted in 2022, you will see that if the PDP won in the two largest local governments, Buhari and Amak, in fact, it was PDP scored about 60.9 votes, of the six local governments. There, let me even stun you. The APC lost the polling unit in the presidency to the PDP. So you could see some level of competition. Abuja has never had a caretaker committee before because elections are conducted as a when do. Abuja is the only place where you have a by-election. Somebody there, I think it was in Garki or something in 2018, where a by-election was conducted. In Abuja, that's the only place where you have election petition tribunals that are working. In these states, by the law, the petition tribunals are supposed to be organized by the judiciary, and the appeal is supposed to be the state high court. These institutions have already been captured. In which states will anybody win an election petition in this, where the governors are like emperors? Forgetting that the first point of contact of any form of development is at the local government level. When local governments thrive, I assure you that some of the insecurities you see today will reduce. Some of the poverty you see today will reduce, because that unit, the way it was intended at the Constitution, is that it will trickle down to the granular level at the local government, at the councillorship level. But what you have is like Alhaji Gaban said, is the selection of surrogates. And to what ends? Not even for development or for leader, but to continue to steal from the treasury of the local government, which it used to be their ATM. But now with the pronouncement of the Supreme Court, so you find a loophole and make a show of an election, when merely what you just did is just to satisfy or righteousness. This cannot continue. It just cannot continue.
Alhaji Gaban, I mean, let's take a step backwards and look at the nomination process, even at that level, at the local government level. I'm sure your party has taken part in some of these elections that we're talking about. 28 or even more states have conducted local government elections, and not in one of those states has opposition parties won any significant votes or any significant seats. Apart from, of course, Akwa Ibom State, where one of the local governments was donated to an opposition political party. Yes, I say donated because it was a bit controversial and all of that. And in some of the states, they even made it almost impossible for opposition political parties to nominate candidates. In fact, in one of the states, they did put in place a nomination fee, which was challenged in court before they allowed them to nominate their candidate. What was the experience of your party in some of these states?
Let me tell you, the level of impunity is deeper than you thought. It's just like you now going to contest for Senate or House of Rep or governorship, and you can imagine that you go and pay INEC and collect the form. It's not possible. It's against the law, because INEC is being funded by public funds. So INEC doesn't charge anybody one dime who is going to contest. The law says that the party is a sponsor of candidates. Now, at the state level, that is the level of thievery, criminality, and impunity that is going on, a state independent electoral commission funded by the state resources will be charging participants or those who want to contest from 2 million up to 10 million. Up to 10 million. We challenge most of these things because it's against the law, it's illegal for the state independent electoral commission to charge aspirants to pay for forms. And there's no any law that backs them to do that. 2, the law says that you must program the local government election within 360 days. There was no state that conducted local government that complied with that law. None. None. But the notices, the guideline, and everything covers that period. There is no single state that respected that law. And the Electoral Act is superior to the state's Electoral Act. So the state Electoral Act is subject to National Electoral Act. So that is the level of impunity that is going on. Two, I don't know any states, if I could remember vividly after conducting the shared local government election, that even announced the number of votes won by each candidate. What they do is just a blanket announcement, my party won 100%. That's what they do. That is how shameless it is. Now, you see, what we have at the national level, you have to believe or see INEC as a saint, even though INEC is not independent, as he has mentioned. I have said this severally. We don't have independent electoral commission. The national chairman of INEC was appointed by executive. National commissioners appointed by executive. Resident electoral commissioner appointed by executive. And then even the election itself, the entire funding is at the mercy of the executive. And also, part of the guideline is that the environment must be conducive for INEC to deploy election materials. Who is responsible for making the environment conducive? It's the executive. Who funded it? It's the executive. INEC have no vehicle of their own to convey the system. So if you have scarcity of fuel or something, there's nothing INEC can do. They have to go to the commercial transport owners, negotiate with them to convey all this. Now, in all this, you'll find out that the judiciary that ought to have purged the system to be the conscience of the nation, to stabilize the institution of democracy, you will find them dishing out injunctions and orders to the detriment of this democracy that people have sacrificed their life to build and stabilize. We fought this system. Some of us were detained. The founding fathers were sent to prison. Some of them have no idea how people fought, sacrificed their life to restore democracy, even in 1999. And then most largely 90% of the career politicians were dislocated from the system. You have criminal elements, business-oriented people that have been around the corridors of power, doing contracts, moving into administrative seat of government, taking over, have no idea how to manage a state, have no idea how to manage even their family, running the entire state. And so they call the state resources their own personal resources. If they give you another, I give you my money. That is the level of impunity that is going on. Two, I really wonder, or the justification for the Supreme Court to pass the financial autonomy of the local government, which is laudable, which is one of the credit that this government ought to have taken. By the action of the governors conducting this local government, rushing to conduct local government because of these resources in the local government, because they've been taken out by separating the financial autonomy from the joint account. Now, what they try to do is to rubbish the judgment of the Supreme Court, and the same Supreme Court is sitting and allowing the lower court to rubbish what they have done. Instead of protecting the system, it's not about individualism, it's about collectivism. It's about protecting the institution. So for me, there is no reason of getting a different independent body to conduct local government election. INEC have the structure. What you need to is to expand that structure of INEC and give them more mandate, fund them to conduct local government election. You'll see the balancing, just the way you are seeing some sort of semblance of balancing, both in the National Assembly, in some states where parties won. Otherwise, there's no way this system cannot go on its knees. And then it will be horrible under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu that created local government when he was the governor of Lagos State, had a major fight with President Obasanjo to allow this kind of carnage, this kind of barbarism, lawlessness to continue to prevail over a democratically elected governance. The only president that have shown determination to put the system was President Shehu Musa Yar'Adua, who said that the system that produced him is full of flaws, deliberately, so that the system can adjust. You have Justice Uwai's report as well, that is rusting somewhere else. So many recommendations. Recently, we participated in this Electoral Act amendment. And when you get there, you listen to the conversations. There is no deliberate attempt to correct the ills or the pitfalls of this current Electoral Act. What they are interested is to rush the whole thing, justify the budget that was made for amendment of the Electoral Act. There was no listening ears from the field officers. Because if you pass this Electoral Act, the practitioners of this Electoral Act are two people, INEC and political parties. So if you bring people who are not conversant with the system, who have not identified the problem, and you give them the go-ahead to bring in anything they feel like bringing in, we'll run into the deadlock. We have run into this Electoral Act that have taken about 70% of those who pass it into law in the National Assembly, that have taken them out. What we are saying is that a system that will accommodate all Nigerians irrespective of their views. But in a situation where a governor governing the states discriminates against his own people in his own states because they don't belong to the one dialect, the same governor wants to be president of Nigeria. And you think that this system will survive? Someone who discriminates at the lower level and want to be a president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and we're sitting down here believing that the system is working, is functioning? Where, how? We are just deceiving ourselves.
All right, Dr. Amadi, before we go into talking about the nature or kind of electoral reforms that is required, let's look at election observation and monitoring. During governorship and even other national election exercises, you see election monitors, both foreign and local, are very active on the field. But in the past couple of months, while these local government elections have been taking place, very little or nothing has been heard of election monitoring by whether foreign or local election observer groups. There's, that depicts the fact that there's very little interest from the CSOs about what happens at the local government level.
Yes and no. Yes and no, and I'll buttress that. But I want to make one point that the national chairman talked about quickly. The reality is the appointing processes of the Independent National Electoral Commission, for now you can't fault it, except something better. The process, as envisaged by law, carries everybody along. The nomination is done by the executive, according to the Constitution, in consultation with the National Council of States. You take that nomination process to where? To the National Assembly, an assembly of the people that now look at this and screens these people. And then when they are screened, they now, you know, more or less either accept or reject and sends back to the executive to now swear in. So the process, where you now have issues is where first the executive nominates persons with questionable character, because the Constitution envisages that the people you will nominate,
that's the point,
you know, should be men of, you know, that above board, non-partisan, that, you know, with integrity. Now you skip that.
No, even if that is done,
then you are supposed to.
There's a check and balance.
That's why I've talked about
in any case, executives have no right to nominate under normal circumstances.
You have the capture of institutions, because we practice in the presidential system. Don't forget.
Yes.
And in the presidential system, you have to be very careful. There are powers that are domiciled with the president, in the executive, that you cannot abdicate. Now, the checks and balance of that the part is that the National Assembly should be able to say, wait a minute, this person falls short of this later criteria. But because of capture, what you have is take a bow and go. What you have is a situation where the president or the executive, they have what they call a liaison officer, who sometimes is a former member of the National Assembly, that liaises and make sure that these people of questionable character pass through this. Now, we've said that a leader should be able to look above board. Look, former President Goodluck Jonathan, when he appointed Jega, he said, I don't know this man, but I was looking for a man of integrity that will get the job done. The outcome is what you see. He was a victim for that, but the system was better for it. The system was better for it. So the process for me, like I said, we have people, and that's what Gabam was talking about. When you have, for want of a better saying, when you have people of questionable character that should not have any reason to be in governance, finding themselves as governors, as ministers, as what have you, and you expect them to dish out any policy that will have integrity. Now, back to the issue of monitoring. Honorable Gabam mentioned something. When you see a process that has been put in place that is meant to fail, that has not complied with the rule of law, with the law as it were, will any sensible civil society organization want to participate in that, to rubber stamp it, to go and monitor? Monitor what? I mean, observe what? Observe something that will, let me assure you that no governor will even allow for any sensible civil society organization to come and observe.
Absolutely.
So what do you want to observe for? Something that is already doomed for failure? Again, I also argue, and I've said it in your program before, that some of these international funders are only interested in the presidential election. After the presidential election, they go back, and even the state governors, they're not even interested in that. They go back. And that tells you that it is who that pays the piper that the test is due. They're the ones bringing the funds. So until even we as civil society organizations begin to look for a way to fund our processes without totally depending on international donor agencies, you will not have them tell you to, they will detect to you what they want. So that is why I said it is neither here nor there. You want to go to an election that has only been predetermined to waste money that you don't have, and then later the governor will turn around and say the election was observed by civil society organizations when it was clearly a process that has been put in place to fail. Let me tell you something, look. Go through our laws. And I have been someone that has always maintained that the problem with Nigeria is not about the laws. The laws are there. In the process of implementing them, you may see one or two things, you tweak them. He has talked about the election, the electoral act amendments that is going on now. If I tell you what the political class are concocting there, you will be shocked to find out that at the end of the day, they may do away with even the technology that we currently have. What they are currently concocting. Because let me tell you something, your audience should listen to what the politician is saying. The last electoral act, which they passed without knowing what they passed, was the reason why 70% of those national assemblies did not come back. And you think this present class will let that particular document to remain in its present form or make it better? One of the things that we are seeing right now is a judiciary that has refused to allow for technology to work. In every pronouncement that has been made by the judiciary, where you expect the judiciary to rise to the occasion and protect the innovation of election integrity, which is vis-a. What has been the judgment of the Supreme Court with regards to the role of technology? And so the outcome is what we are seeing in elections now, in Imo State, in Edo State, where rather Beavers becoming the sole adjudicator of the number of accredited voters. It has now become the voters register. So people now walk to an answer and no longer to the number of people that actually were accredited on that day. So when you go to the Beavers portal, you see a different number. But when you see the real result, you see a different number. And then what happens?
Absolutely.
The judiciary says all is well and good. It's pushless. Everybody go ahead.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The system has been captured. Our democracy is in decline. This is not the democracy we fought for.
No, never.
The question then is, which is what Alhaji Gabam talked about earlier on, what type of electoral reforms are needed now to improve the situation? Because as we speak, there are two options before the National Assembly. One is that a new body, a new electoral body that will conduct only local government elections should be put in place. The second is that, look, scrap the SIECs and transfer their powers and responsibilities to INEC.
Look, I am not one to accept that the responsibility of, as appealing as it is, because what we have as a semblance of a working institution in terms of election management in Nigeria is the INEC. Because whatever you have to say about INEC, you really will not substitute INEC with what is happening at the states, really. And that is why you see the efforts to want to compromise it. And that is why when you even look at the elections, you see some level of competition, and you see political parties participating in INEC conducted elections. The kind of reform we're asking for is to see a situation where political parties become members of INEC. Where you nominate political parties and nominate, they have, even if it is at what do you call it, official level, they are there on the table where decisions at the national, where decisions is being made. So everybody sees the process of, you understand me, as is done in some other places. Okay? In Kenya, for example, you have political parties being members on that place. You need to see that. Now, the reason why I not subscribe to this is, as I talk to you now, INEC is constantly in transition, even with the current body we have. There is no month that INEC is not conducting a by-election. Somebody is dying. In fact, the mortality rate of members in the National Assembly is one of the highest anywhere in the world. In the last 4 years, about 67 members of the National Assembly have died. So INEC is constantly conducting elections. And now today, there are people taking INEC to court over the cost, the so-called cost of elections. People are saying that the last election, so 300 billion was used. Why? If INEC takes over the responsibility of conducting election in the local government, every week there will be elections. Because of mortalities, do you see the constituency we are talking about? Apart from that, are Nigerians ready for an election budget that is over 2 trillion? So the intendment of the preference of the Constitution is that you will have individuals that live above board, that will respect institutions, leave certain things to be sacrosanct. But where it is now, I am more maybe in favor of maybe a national body that will begin to conduct, what do you call it, local government elections. The same way we are asking that INEC should be unbundled to have the prosecution, a body that prosecutes election offenses. Because INEC is not equipped to...
An electoral offenses commission.
Because INEC is not equipped to carry that. And maybe we should carry it. But is that the way to go? It's an aberration. Because we have places where people still conduct elections in their local government, and it looks very free and fair. I give an example of Kenya, for example. The Kenyans have total and absolute confidence in their IEBC, that the Independent Election and Border Commission. So whatever you do, everybody knows that place is sacrosanct. Because, like I said, apart from the way they appointing the processes, how the nomination process is, you also have political parties who are also members of that. And so they see whatever decisions is being made and how it is implemented. But I want to also argue that no matter the kind of laws you put, no matter the kind of institutions you put, to the extent that we have these kinds of leaders that have no business to be, they will find a way to circumvent it, find a flaw in it, and compromise it. And so the question, therefore, is, what do you do? And that is, it talks to our leadership recruitment system.
So, Alhaji Gaban, if your option, your preferred option, is for INEC to take over the functions of the SIECs, as against maybe putting in place another commission that will conduct these elections, does INEC have the capacity, like you have said, the capacity and the resources to conduct elections into 774 councils in Nigeria? Given the fact that some of these elections may all not happen at the same time?
Well, first and foremost, if you know the structure of INEC, they have structure throughout the Federation of Nigeria, including local governments, which means what you need to do is to expand that structure to accommodate the local government election. It's lesser, it's neater than to create a new body and you start building the structure for the new body. The cost is going to be extremely very high. And more that INEC have gone deep into reform of their processes. You will be sitting in your office and transact with INEC freely, and you get acknowledgement of what you transact with INEC. Unlike before, when primitive way of transacting with INEC, and INEC is like, it was a police station when you keep your document or you send your document to INEC, you will go back looking for it all over the place. That has been reformed completely. Now, let me tell you, the presidency, I know as of today they have the powers to nominate, but I'm saying the way forward, we must amend that. Those excessive power of the executive need to be amended. The executive have no power to appoint officials of INEC because they are interested party. If we are truly about reforming the electoral process.
They should not, but at
Yes,
the moment,
that's what
the
I'm saying.
Constitution
For the
provides
moment, the
for them to
Constitution
nominate, yes.
gave them power. Now, since we are in the process of amending the Constitution and the Electoral Act, and we are passionate about stabilizing our democracy to make it all inclusive and participatory, which means that the party that is in power, that have interests already, will do everything humanly possible to have their way. But if you have independent body, collection of different class of people, like he mentioned, if it is possible, parties must have interest there in nomination to checkmate some of the terrors that are going to be embedded in the process. That will go a long way in balancing it, because like Kenya and other countries that are having clean election, that's what they do. They balance the whole situation based on the peculiarities of their own countries. Let me tell you, the only radical approach to this, despite the reform INEC have done, despite the reform this chairman have done in INEC, the same judiciary is ridiculing INEC completely. INEC will conduct election, judiciary will declare its everything. So if this is what we are passing through, why don't you scrap INEC and allow judiciary to conduct election in Nigeria? It's safer, it's neater, because they have taken over the function of INEC. INEC is a product of law. Judiciary job is to interpret the law. Now, if the judiciary have encroached into INEC functions and responsibility, then what are we running about? Now, the conscience of the nation, which is the judiciary, the last hope of a common man, is interfering in the independent electoral commission responsibility. Then why are we having INEC? Why are we spending so much billions or trillions into INEC? And then you end up in the judiciary, you spend so much money to get justice in the judiciary, and you think we are right, we are normal human beings? No. We are operating as human beings? We are operating a decent system to be accepted by international community that is far, far below standard? It's absolutely not acceptable. Two, the radical approach too, if you allow me, I will canvass for two system of hierarchy of government, the federal and the local government. Because there's no need to have governance in the states. What is the functions of governance? It's supervising local government activities, programs, and so on and so forth. Now, if you have a structured system where you hold local government accountable, the local government have their assembly, headed by the speaker of the local government within the councillors. They do the budget of the local government, implement program of the local government. And now you have a governor who come and siphons the resources of that local government to his own system, to his own personal use, to the detriment of the state. Then why are you having governors that are creating or collapsing the structures of the states in the name of local government elections? There was no need, no justification. There's no way you can defend it morally. Operationally, you cannot defend it. So if we are locked down in this quagmire, the best thing to do is to be practical about our crisis as a nation. INEC, that is doing its very best, conducting election, other parties are winning, are allowed to participate. There are equal participation in the process of submission to INEC, equal. No party is being discriminated upon, and you get acknowledgement. Where you have the problem is at the polling unit, where vis-a systems are not properly deployed, where accreditation by vis-a system is not taking place, where results, where the law says that if you tamper with the result sheet, the law says cancel that election, where you see results are being mutilated, and INEC is accommodating them due to pressures. So what do we do? And those pressures emanate from where? Someone will take you to court, take INEC to court, and the judiciary will make a pronouncement against INEC. So what do? We are not facing reality. We are doing a lip service to a system that we are collapsing ourselves. The tragedy of Nigeria is a man-made issue. It's not a natural disaster. We are not suffering from natural disaster. We are suffering from man-made disaster that is crippling the country. That is the truth situation. And unless you apply a radical approach to the issue, you cannot solve this problem. The way the corruption have embedded the system, have hijacked the system, there's nothing anybody can do.
Dr. Amadi, in the wake of the July 11 Supreme Court judgment, in fact, that is what has resulted in the rush to conduct local government elections because of the direct allocation to local governments. And he said something earlier on, that perhaps the judiciary, and particularly the Supreme Court, can begin to look at what is happening now with these sham or shambolic local government elections taking place, and what the intendment of that judgment is. Is there anything that the Supreme Court can do at this point in time?
I want to say that I'm not giving some of what is happening these days now in the judiciary, that I've even lost confidence even in the judiciary itself. And you would think that the judiciary will be the last hope, especially at the Supreme Court level of the common man, and to write. In some cases, in very few cases, you've seen the judiciary make certain, what I call activist pronouncements. For example, in the judgments, when they were lampooning the judgment of the Plateau State Court of Appeal judgment, you could see the justices of the Supreme Court coming hard, asking very serious questions about the competencies of the judges in the Court of Appeal that made that ruling, that more or less sacked the governor and sacked members of the National Assembly from that state. But there was nothing they could do because that judgment terminated at the Court of Appeal. Yeah. But for the governor, they had to do something about that. The Justice West reports, proposed that the judiciary, the National Judicial Council, should now be saddled with the responsibility of nominating the members of INEC, the chairman of INEC and all that. So the big question is, who appoints the chairman of the National Judicial Council? And then the head of the Supreme Court. Is it not the same president? The same president that we are trying to avoid is the same person that appoints the head of the Supreme Court. So you have a situation, it's a revolving door. So you can actually get what you want. The president is at the mercy to say you recommend 3 justices and he said, I don't want this, I want that. It's his prerogative. So you still come back to the president. So I still maintain that the issue is not about the process of appointing, you understand me? The issue is we have, because this is a family program, I don't want to use the language I really want to use to describe the political class and their shenanigans. But when you have individuals that have no business in governance, and you give them the levers of power to make decisions that border on integrity, and this person has an integrity deficit, you cannot give what you do not have. Let's go back to the question you asked about the judgment and the clear rush. Is it to say that the Supreme Court is not aware that its judgment is being ridiculed? And is that what we're saying in a country where 28 elections have already taken place?
Yes, yes.
Is it to say that the Attorney General of the Federation, who took the matter to court in this instance, is not aware that that these elections cannot stand the smear test, that they cannot stand the integrity test? Why is he not quick to return back to the Supreme Court to say this is not the intendment, that this is an aberration? Why are they keeping quiet? So there's collusion, like I use the word again, capture at every level. And I want to sound a note of warning that there's a lot that a system can take before it collapses. Even there's what they call system collapse. When you begin to stock a system and continue to stock a system, at some point in time, it will collapse. And what you have here is to the extent that you don't do anything, you embolden people more. They continue to push the envelope of impunity. So when they try an act, a ridiculous act, and you don't do anything to stop it, they try another one till you get to the point where the system will implode. And like Honorable Gaban said, what we have in Nigeria is a man-made disaster at all levels. The president needs to stand up and do something, because he that initiated this because of what he suffered as governor.
Exactly.
In the hands of a president that used his power, in a way that ridicules the system. we have a lot of conflagrations in the country, insecurity situations.
Absolutely.
If you get local government administration right, I assure you that some of these conflagrations, some of this insecurity will reduce by a very significant number. Because you get engaged. The local government system is all encompassing. He just told you that you have an assembly in the local government system. Don't forget that these ward councillors represent the smallest units of their constituencies.
Yes.
But what you have now is people now leave their council, where the first contact they will have should be their councillor. If you even have what you call supervisory councillors, that's they are like commissioners. They all live there and go to government houses. Yes. And they are lazy to go disturb, as it were. And that is what they want. The weaponization of poverty, you get people so impoverished to the level where you become a lord of the manor. You become an emperor, and then you give them stipends. And then tomorrow you talk about vote buying, when you have impoverished the people because you have refused to allow systems, democratic systems and structures to work.
All right, gentlemen, a lot has been said. We just hope that those who should listen and who should take action should. We have talked about the president not just staying aloof, looking at what is going on without having to do something about it. The Supreme Court itself, the judiciary, having delivered that landmark judgment, ought to, at this point in time, begin to say, look, this is not the intendment of this judgment, and something needs to be done.
Let me say 1 second.
Very quickly.
You know, what judiciary did was to break the law to correct the law. When a nation is trapped, you need a tough decision. Nigeria democracy is trapped. They need to break that section of the constitution that is not allowing the system to function, to correct it. They must break that and correct it. You have to balance the terror of governance versus extremists that are in power. They don't want the system to function. They are looting, they are milking the country out. That led to impossible statistics that anyone can generate, the poverty level the nation is going to, that is leading to the insecurity that is going on. And there is no initiative to solve this problem right now. Apart from propaganda of government, we are doing on ground. There's no any justification. You cannot find it anywhere.
Thank you so much. Alhaji Shehu Gabam is the national chairman of the Social Democratic Party, SDP. Thank you so much for your time. And Dr. Chima Amadi is the chairman governing board of Center for Transparency Advocacy, CTA, a political scientist and a public policy specialist. Thank you so much for your time. That's our program for today. Please join us again as we bring you a fresh edition of People, Politics, and Power. Bye for now. Thank you.